I'm here with Maritime Wrestling personality Stoo Metz. How you doing today, Stu?
Doing all right, NewScott.
How did you get involved in the Maritime Wrestling scene?
So way back in, I think it was April of last year, Wrestle Center had Mick Foley as their special guest, and I decided to come out and see the show. I was going to stick around for the show. I was just going to say hi to Mick, and I went to see the show, and I actually met up with 5 guys in the lineup there, who ended up becoming my 5 horsemen, and they convinced me to stick around and see the show. I loved the show. The big surprise at the Emma Samoa Joe just blew my mind. I became an instant fan. And then a few months later, I was hosting the Maritime Tattoo Festival. I took a picture of myself wearing my Lucha Underground shirt because I was in the spot where we have the Wrestle Center shows at the Forum, and I was just really excited. And I was holding the microphone at the time. Wrestle Center had parted ways with their previous ring announcer, and Tyler, I think, was the one who spoke up to Jason Mosier, and then Mosier asked me, he said, how would you feel about giving ring announcing for Wrestle Center a whirl? And I thought about it, and I figured, I've been on stage in front of thousands and thousands of people for other gigs. So I feel like I can do this. It was a little shaky on my first night there, learning the ropes, how it gets done. The fans were supportive, and all the guys behind the scenes were super supportive. So I was happy to be a part of Wrestle Center.
Were you a fan of Maritime Wrestling before Wrestle Center?
Not to the degree that I am now. I didn't know very many local wrestlers. I'm not ashamed to say that I was sitting in that April show for the Mick Foley show there, and leaning over to one of my 5 horsemen. His name is Austin Flaherty.
Would Heather Ord please
fine.
come to the first floor welcome desk, please? Heather Ord.
And that's a shoot. So my buddy Austin Flaherty, I kept leaning over to him and I said, listen, I don't really know the local wrestling scene that well, but if I have a question, who this person is and should I cheer for them, and he totally filled me in. And since then, become a fan of the local wrestling scene, and I'm really happy to see guys like Marcus Burke be in stuff like ROH, and be, pushing their limits. And hopefully, as we all hope here in the Maritimes, that he makes it to like NXT or something.
You mentioned to me previously that you painted the canvas for UCW. How did that come about?
So a long time ago, I worked at Freeman's Little New York, and there's a fellow that worked at Freeman's that also was involved with UCW, and I was just becoming a photographer at the time. I was literally just becoming a photographer. And he set it up with a bunch of the wrestlers that they needed some photos done. So I brought them into my studio and we did some promo photos of them and all that sort of thing. And then I met Chuck, and Chuck mentioned that, hey, do you have any artist friends that would like to come in and paint the canvas? And so my buddy Chris Lockerbie, who is much more of an artist than I am, he helped design the little UCW that's on the little yellow UCW that's on the canvas there.
Yep.
And we spent, I think, 2 afternoons painting that on there. I'm sure somebody else is taking that over because that was way back in 2011, but we did that initially.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Now that you've come back behind the scenes, do you view wrestling any different from being backstage now as opposed to when you're sitting in the crowd?
Yes, because I have a better appreciation for what the guys in the back, the wrestlers, have to go through in order to put a match together. It's amazing to sit there to I try to give them space so that they can concentrate and all that, but I can see them backstage trying to put the matches together, try to make sure that everything is going to come out seamlessly for their match. And to see them do that backstage and then get to sit out at the ring announcer's table and watch them do what they do in the ring is just, you don't normally get to see behind the curtain, and see how that gets done. And that I have a new appreciation for all the hard work that they put into given the fans an excellent match.
As the ring announcer, what type of preparation do you put into announcing the show beforehand?
You'd be surprised, but I sit there with the entire script for the night, and I will break down the script into cue cards, and I will write those. I'll basically have the entire show in point form on these cue cards so that I don't miss a beat, and I have to I even have to warm my voice up, so I'll go outside, out back, usually the forum, and just warm the voice up so it's ready to go, so I don't choke on my first ladies and gentlemen out of the rope. But yeah, just get super hype. It comes naturally to me because I'm used to being in front of crowds of thousands, and when you're in front of a crowd of 1,000, you got to be able to warm them up and get them cheering and loud. So it's the same with a Wrestle Center crowd when we want to film them and have them all super hype. So.
Yeah. I remember being in the ring with you when you were announcing your very first match. For
you are my favorite guy to be in the ring with.
Yeah, I love being in there with you too. You were nervous, and you mentioned that you have announced or performed in front of thousands of people before. That crowd is a lot smaller than thousands of people. Why were you nervous doing that?
Because I want to give the wrestling fans what they deserve, and they deserve somebody who's on point. And I've kind of noticed it's almost kind of like the ring announcer is the man who is turning the page of every book, is leading you through the show. He's the voice of what happens. Immediately, if something happens and everybody's looking around to try to understand what's going on, 99.9% of the time, eventually everybody looks at me and is basically waiting for me to basically tell them exactly what just happened. And it's my job to be on point to tell them, it's a DQ, it's someone just got injured, and we're going to replace them with this wrestler, and I'm the one that has to tell them that. And if I'm not on point, then it just makes for not a fun show. So.
And just to speak to that you did 2 shows in a row that first night. It was Halifax and
It was
Kentville,
my
right?
birthday weekend.
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And from night 1 to night 2, you were a completely different ring announcer.
Yeah.
It just took that first show. I kind of wish it was reversed, that
Yeah.
Kentville was first and then Halifax.
Yeah.
Because you were ready to go the next night in Kentville. It was spot on, really, really good. And,
Yeah.
and ever since, you've been hitting it really, really well.
The first night there was, like you said, it was a little shaky because I didn't know the. You can sit in the audience and you can think you know how a wrestling show is done,
Yeah.
but then you can be on the other side
Yeah.
of the fence and have to be on point and ready to go, and have to be watching match for a certain point and be watching the ref and be listening for the bell and all this sort of stuff. And that first night, I will be the first to admit that I was very shaky.
Yeah.
But the fans were very forgiving, and the guys in the back, Mosier and Tyler, and everybody in the back was super nice. The drive down there, Steve Arsenault gave me a lot of really great pointers, which I was super thankful for. And so when we got to Kentville, I just felt much more prepared. I knew the format, the layout of what I was about to do, so I felt more ready to go.
What are your thoughts on the current Maritime wrestling scene?
I am happy for the current wrestling scene because right now there's, and I'm sorry if I forget one, there's Wrestle Center, UCW, TCW, IHW, and Red Rock, I think are all the major promotions
There's
right now.
one more, Vision Pro,
Vision Pro,
in
okay.
northern New Brunswick.
Yeah. So that creates basically a pretty good scene. And from what I've heard, and I've only ever been to UCW and Wrestle Center shows. I've never been to any of the other ones. But from what I hear and what I read online through Madison's group and through other groups online and everything, that it's really strong right now. There's a little bit of a drama going on right now, but I don't want to get into that because I do my best to steer clear of any of that stuff, and just the fans will be the fans. The fans will be upset about everything. You can give them exactly what they want, and they'll be upset about it. But that's just how it is. That's just wrestling. It's the same with WWE, where the WWE will give us everything we want, but I myself am a huge mark for WWE, and I will find something to complain about. So,
What are your thoughts on the support the fans give Maritime Wrestling?
the support that the fans give for Maritime Wrestling. When I was a person sitting in the audience for the first time in years, since I had seen a wrestling show, the fans were what made me stick around, because they were so rabid, and they were so, cheering and all this sort of thing. And that's what I've always wanted to experience, but didn't know that the local wrestling scene had that. And I thought I'd have to go to a WWE show to see that. And the fans proved me wrong at that show and made me instantly a fan of the local wrestling scene. Then when I was on the other side of the fence and becoming a ring announcer, it was the fans that were the ones that kept me, gave me that support and kept me going and kept me being a ring announcer for Wrestle Center and kept me wanting to come back. You can notice with new wrestlers, you can notice with wrestlers that have been there for a while that the fans will make or break a wrestler. And if a wrestler is unknown, but he gives them an excellent match, and they fall into it, and they go with it, then he'll become a star. There's the last Wrestle Center match, last Wrestle Center show, sorry. It was the very first match, and it was Max Power, and I forget the other guy's name at this moment. I feel real bad that I forget his name. He was a new fella.
It wasn't Max Power. It was Chip Chambers.
Chip Chambers, that's right.
And I don't remember who he wrestled, but it
something
was,
Rave, I think it was.
That's right. Yeah.
Jimmy Rave.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that match got over, and they.
Yeah, and so in that match, he is completely brand new to the fans.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a number of fans who said that when it came to that match, he won them over, and he and I think, and I was talking with Chip in the back, and that's, he essentially wanted his buddy to get over with the fans, and that's essentially what happened, and the fans became a fan of him that night.
Yeah.
And I know that with future Wrestle Center shows, if he's there and he's wrestling and he's cultivating his character, the fans are going to get behind him because that night he won them over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they definitely did. I wasn't out there for that match, but I was backstage, and you could hear the crowd reacting to everything that they did.
It was like,
really good.
right at the beginning, they were like, who the F is this guy?
Right.
We don't know who he is.
Yeah.
But by the end of the match, when he had shown them what he could do and how daring he was and all that sort of thing, he won them over.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the support the fans have given you since you started ring announcing?
I mean, like, I understand where the fans were coming from when I replaced the previous Wrestle Center ring announcer, who has a lot of respect and love in the scene here. And I knew that going out there that night, there was a chance that the fans were not going to like me at all, because I wasn't the previous ring announcer that they were huge fans of, and rightfully so. He's a really good ring announcer. So I was worried, but the fans proved me wrong, and they stuck by me, and they gave me support. And even going up to Membertook Cape Breton, where I've never even been to Membertook Cape Breton, the fans up there were, high-fiving me and coming up and wanting to take pictures with me, and that's kind of a new thing for me.
Yeah.
And then coming out here for this show, I mean, the fans kind of get behind my Five Horsemen when they say "Stoo" when I climb in the ring, because I'm apparently the Ric Flair of our Five Horsemen. But yeah, I have my Five Horsemen who have always had my back, and I am eternally grateful to those guys always having my back, and that gave me the strength to get through those first shaky nights, and then having the fans cheer for me when I come out. It means a lot, and because I'm the super new guy to the ring announcing scene, and I didn't know if I was going to win them over or not, and they've stuck by me and they've given me support too, so I'm grateful.
Who has been your favorite person to announce so far? Any of the local guys or any of the names that they bring in?
Yeah, it's My favorite person to ring announce, it's really funny, but it's Tommy Starr.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but when I just get into the groove of doing my ring announcer voice, and I do the Tommy Starr, I just really enjoy that. He's just got a really cool name, and I just really dig getting to say Tommy Starr. If we're talking big stars, Johnny Mundo was a big deal for me because I'm a huge Lucha Underground fan, so it was kind of really awesome to get to say Johnny Mundo's name, and call him out to the ring. You always have that dream when you're a little kid that you're going to grow up and be like a wrestling star. I know that's kind of gone for me now because I'm going to be turning 36 this year, and I don't want to start breaking my body now. Kind of need it for the rest of my life. But getting to ring announce some of these wrestlers that I have major respect for is the next best thing. And on April 9th, when Kurt Angle comes to Wrestle Center, and if it just works through the script that I get to announce him, that'll be kind of a milestone for me.
That'll be huge, yeah. What has been your favorite moment that you've been a part of so far during a show? Like your favorite show, your favorite moment on a show?
There's been two of them. I enjoy the heels. I'm a huge mark for heels than I am baby faces. And as much as everybody hates them, there's a point when JP Sims gets in the ring and he is, giving the fans all this kind of like, F you guys, and he's bringing in the heat on him and all this sort of thing. And I've always enjoyed that about his character. He's always just so hated. And there's always a point in the ring where JP Sims will either kind of give me a shove or be kind of a dick to me in some sort of way. And there was a point in Kentville where he DDT'd Jake the Snake but left his belt in the ring and then came over and grabbed me and forced me to go in the ring to go get the belt for him. I get a kick out of that stuff because that makes me, just for a glimmer of a second, a part of the show. I'm not a wrestler, nor will I ever be a wrestler, but I like these little moments where I get to be a part of the show where I have to run in the ring and get a belt or I get shoved. The other one was when Julian Young unfortunately hurt his ankle, and
I was a ref in that match.
You were. And I had to climb into the ring because we obviously had somebody that was going to take over. It turned out to be JP Sims. But when I climbed into the ring, Christopher Daniels wasn't too happy about it. And he got into my face. And he and I kind of had a little bit of jaw-jacking back and forth. And that was just kind of a really cool moment for me because, again, I'm not a wrestler. But for that glimmer of a second, for like maybe 10 seconds, I was a part of the match for just a second. Just to jaw-jack back and forth with him. So that was a really cool moment. I really did that.
Awesome.
And I guess the only other point for it for me was, and this goes out to the fans, it was the best fan moment probably of my entire wrestling life, was we were in Kentville, Nova Scotia. A lot of the Halifax guys had driven down to see the show. I climbed into the ring. The guys all stood up and started chanting "Happy Birthday,"
I remember that.
and then they took "Happy Birthday" streamers and they threw them in the ring at me.
Is that the show they had the giant Stoo sign too?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm not ashamed to say, but I was in the ring, and as those streamers were flying over my head and everybody was cheering "Happy Birthday" and everything, may have got a little teary-eyed, tried to hide it because you don't cry in wrestling, but that was probably because I had given up my birthday to be on the road for Wrestle Center. So
I didn't realize that. That's pretty awesome.
No, that made it for me. So I was grateful to the fans for that.
On April 8th and April 9th, Wrestle Center has two shows. The first one in Cape Breton, the second one in Halifax. Too Cold Scorpio, old ECW, WWE, and WCW wrestler is going to be on both those shows. But on the 9th in Halifax, Kurt Angle is going to be here.
Yeah.
What do you think that means?
I think it's a pretty big deal. I mean, I haven't really watched. I haven't watched TNA as of late. I watched TNA for probably up till about 2012, 2013, And then I just couldn't. Their format kind of changed, and I just didn't like it too much anymore. But from all the WWE days, and then when he immediately showed up in TNA to his feud with Desmond Wolfe, which is probably one of my favorite wrestling feuds of all time. I've been a fan of his, and I think it's a pretty big deal that Wrestle Center was able to bring in, not only Olympic gold medalist, but somebody who has held, titles in both WWE and TNA.
Yeah, in my opinion, he'll go down as one of the greatest of all time, top 5 or top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
And
I know there's no way that I could know this at all, but I feel that you'll definitely see him in WWE before he's completely done.
Absolutely. I'm surprised he's not already back there now. It's the first time in his career he's ever been out of contract, and I don't imagine it's going to last very long.
Yeah. I read that when he was at that Arnold Classic with Triple H, came up to him and had a little chat with him, so I will probably see him soon.
What does the future hold for Stoo Metz in wrestling or in anything else you want to talk about?
In Wrestle Center, I'll always be with Wrestle Center.
You don't have any interest in doing anything else for anyone else anywhere?
No, it's not because I'm not against any of the other federations. It's just that I'm a very busy guy, and I'm trying to do, and so I literally have to look ahead at my schedule of photography and shooting videos and all that sort of stuff that I do, and hosting gigs and being an entertainer.
You do that full time. That's your full-time job.
That's my full-time job. Yeah. So I do that, so I have to look ahead, and I was really glad that when Wrestle Center announced that their next show wasn't until April, I hadn't really planned anything around them. And so it's not that I'm against being a ring announcer for TCW or UCW or all that sort of thing, but I feel like Wrestle Center is going to be the only spot that I do it. And it's just because I'm a super busy guy. And also, I feel like those places they've got Dave Boyce, and Dave Boyce does an amazing job as a ring announcer. And so I feel like they're already set for ring announcing. I have done one other ring announcing gig for a punk rock show that was a faux wrestling show that happened. It was called GCW. It was for Adrian Broom at Gus's Pub.
Okay.
You can look that up online.
Is it online?
Yeah, it is online. Yeah, you can look it up. It was fun. It was it was a full wrestling show, but they definitely did have a match in Gus's Pub with no ring or anything.
Oh,
so
okay.
it was really good. There was a table spot. And then as far as being super busy, we've got the shows on April 9th and 8th and 9th. Could be heading up to Sydney to shoot photos for the ECMAs.
Oh, nice.
In April, and and then just doing my thing at my studio here in Halifax.
All right. Do you have any closing comments?
Thank you to the wrestling fans, very, very much, because without you, there would be no me being a ring announcer, because you gave me the support to be able to get through that first rocky night, and I super appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the Wrestle Center shows on April 8th and 9th, especially to see Kurt Angle, and can't wait to see you guys there.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Cheers.